All right. Good morning and welcome everybody to your Healthy Self podcast and webinar. This is your host and moderator today, Cade Archibald, and really excited to be diving into today's topic. We got an amazing guest, and as usual, we got the OG Regan Archibald with us, founder of East West Go Wellness and Anodyne Pain and Wellness founding member. So today we're going to be diving into some things on Lyme, and I'll let Regan introduce our amazing guest speaker today. Before we dive in there, want to just make sure everyone was on the Health Accelerator challenge last night. We did so. The challenge was 20 seconds of cold exposure, cold shower. Hopefully
Minimum.
minimum 20 seconds. So, if you can make it 4 minutes, better. Um, and so hopefully you guys all had a great experience. Let's hear it in the chat box how your experience was. If you aren't a part of that Health Accelerator challenge and course, reach out to Anne in the chat box or email her. You can also go to acueastwest.com/hack, HAC. And yeah, we're having a great time with that. Starting in March, we'll be focusing more on pain related topics. So if you have pain, you got to make sure you're on there at least in March. And so and then make sure you take a look at the thyroid, autoimmune, the peptide program that we presented last night. If you didn't have a chance to, we can send you more details on that. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Reagan. Enough with announcements. Let's dive in, and I'm excited about today's topic.
Awesome. Well, we've got Dr. Diane Mueller with us, and as a survivor of Lyme and mold illness, she's someone who's very passionate about bringing research and understanding and compassion to those with these chronic diseases. There's not a lot of answers out there, as you guys have seen. And not only does she hold one doctorate in naturopathic medicine, but she holds a second in acupuncture and oriental medicine, which is so phenomenal. So her mission is in bringing truth and transparency about the current research, treatment modalities, and clinical insights to the community. Dr. Mueller believes there's no one size that fits all in medicine, and that people respond to different therapies and approaches. So I've got some good questions for her. She part of her work is in helping those suffering with illness ask the right questions so they can determine which medical approach is right for them. She has co-authored a book, which is to be released in May of 2021, called Use Your Mind to Heal Your Mold and Lyme. Her practice, the Medicine with Art Clinic, treats those around the country. And she also co-owns the online functional medicine school, the Medicine with Heart Institute, where she trains clinicians from around the world in functional medicine. So, Diane, welcome to the show.
Thanks. I'm so happy to be here with you guys today.
Yeah, really, really great to have a fellow practitioner and someone who's asking deeper questions, because the biggest crisis we have right now is that people aren't asking more questions, would be my opinion. What do you think some of the best questions people could be asking about their healthcare right now?
Well, I think the number one question really is what is the reason? The thing I try to really coach our clients on is we get so excited, in medicine, especially when people have been sick for so long. It's so easy to get excited about like the answer, the diagnosis, whether it's fibro or Lyme or headaches or PMS, whatever it is. And one of the challenges, I think, with how we are so like societally trained is that we're often trained that the diagnosis is like the end.
Right.
And, you and I know that the diagnosis is actually in many ways the beginning, because that's where we get to say, okay, now we can go further and ask why.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, that 2-year-old childlike stage where it's like, well, why is this? And why is this? And why is this? And that curiosity about life that we have at that age, I think can really be applied to medicine. So it's like, no matter what the symptom is, it always comes back to the question, well, why would my body be doing this? Why would my hormones be out of balance? Why would I not be able to fight this infection? Those sorts of things. So that's the number one question I think that should be asked. And then, I think then the other thing is like, when it comes to finding the right doctor and the right practice, one of the things I really encourage people when we're kind of talking on the phone and figuring out if my practice is right for them or not is really to tune in to like, what is one's own individual value system? Like, some people I find are really excited to like biohack and take it to like the highest level of wellness. And
Mhm.
other people really just want to be able to, get out of bed and not be in pain. And the value system, I think, is so important because that can also guide like how much effort, energy one wants to put into one's health and what practice is actually the right practice for them.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's so important. And asking why with the curiosity. Albert Einstein, he said, curiosity is a lot more powerful than knowledge. And he also said imagination is. So, too often we get the diagnosis and then we say, okay, we've got all the answers and healing's done. But, I have a saying that, healing is a journey and disease never takes vacation. So it's like you've always got to be working on it. And so tell us about your experience. I mean, you went through Lyme, mold exposure. What did you notice and what was your life like in that process?
I mean, at one point, there was days where I'd wake up and I would do kind of this body scan to really determine if I thought I was going to have like a really bad day where I couldn't make it to the bathroom easily. Just that journey from the bed to the shower some days would be excruciating.
Mm.
So it was definitely a pretty wild time of life. I remember, even like bringing snowboarding, which I know you and I both mentioned how much we love. There
Yeah.
was one point where I even was like, okay, I think I'm good enough to go. And I went one day, one season, and I got to the top of the mountain. And I'd been snowboarding for a long time at that point, very proficient. And it was so scary. It was so scary because I would start having these really out of body experiences with my illness where I wouldn't be able to feel parts of my body. I would almost feel like my consciousness was dissociated from my body,
Mm.
where I was like, I haven't had like a classic near death experience, but how people talk about their near death experiences of almost like being outside of their body and looking down on it. I would
Yeah.
have these almost episodes that would kind of be like that. Basically, that's how I would describe them. So I was at the mountain, this day, and I started having one of those episodes, and that was obviously the only day I went that season. But then there was other days that, I wouldn't have even made it that far. So it was pain, it was fibro, it was headaches, it was these dissociation things, very, very scary times. I remember a couple of times getting like lost in the world, and I would go on these 5-minute walks and just around the block,
Yeah.
because a lot of days that was all I could do. And I remember days where I would leave my house and walk a few blocks and get like really disoriented about where I was and where my home was. So it's a really scary time.
And so how did you uncover what was going on? What did you do differently?
Well, it's, kind of the classic thing. I mean, I started getting really sick actually when I was in school, when I was in medical school. And it's so easy, and I see this all the time in patient care, that it's so easy to find reasons why we would be feeling this way that are sometimes not the correct reasons, just the theories. So it was really easy in medicine, in medical school, to just have my symptoms be blamed on medical school syndrome, right? It's like
Sure.
late night studying and all that sort of stuff. And basically when I graduated, all my friends were reporting like, oh, they were like getting their energy back and their vitality back, and I was declining. That's when I really began to realize like something was really wrong. And I had, run a lot of standard tests throughout my education, just as part of my learning experience, looking for different things. So I had already run like all of the basic, tests and digestive dysfunction, SIBO, and, advanced stool cultures and all sorts of things. But then basically I decided to start looking out of the box. And that's when I found Lyme disease, a myriad of other vector, insect-borne infections like Bartonella, Babesia, and then also that I had a high level of mycotoxins, of the mold toxins in my body as well.
Wow. And so do you think it was more the mold toxins or the Lyme that was causing the almost the out of body experience?
I definitely see that particular symptom a little more commonly with mold,
Mhm.
but I do see like, crazy neurological inflammation with both of those things. So I think it's really, in my mind, it's like really hard to extrapolate, both of them were present. I treated them both. I got better. It's kind of hard for me to extrapolate and say, well, this symptom was a little more mold than Lyme.
Yeah.
But, in answer to your question, like I see commonalities, and I do see that the dissociation, disorientation, I see that a little more strongly in my mold clientele than the Lyme.
Yeah. Yeah. I've always found it kind of tricky to understand, like, well, what are these symptoms coming from? Is it the mold or is it the Lyme? They're so similar. And did you check your HLA variant? Like, do you have the genetic variant for
Oh
that?
yeah. Yeah. I'm multi-susceptible.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that's lucky you, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But there's always a silver lining, I feel like, in every situation. And, what I tell my clients with multi-susceptible is like, once we get you well, it's like for people that I feel like have the multi-susceptible gene, we have a higher level of need to do certain self-care things to keep ourselves well than,
Right.
say, the average person. But really, everybody is going to benefit. So we can use that gene as almost like a motivation to take ourselves to a higher level of wellness. That's good to have anyways.
Mhm.
I think that's kind of the silver lining of a really challenging situation.
Yeah, yeah. When I had my, I did my methylation panel about 10 years ago, and it gave me so many insights. I grew up on a farm in Idaho and had a lot of chemical exposures, and so ended up with Hashimoto's in about 20 years ago. I was diagnosed with
Mm.
it. Actually, it was longer. It was almost 23 years ago, and but it was like shocking to me. I didn't know why, and then when I ran my genes, I was like, oh yeah, I look like a X-Man. I got variants all over the place, or mutations if you're using the X-Men analogy. So,
Uh-huh.
and my Japanese teacher used to say the best way you can learn how to be a healer is first heal yourself. And so she'd say every time you get sick, it's an amazing gift that God has given you so that you can go and share your knowledge with other people. And that's exactly what you've done. So you're kind of the low of the low, and you're getting lost basically out in lost in the world, as you called it. And so kind of take us where you finally ran some tests and you started digging in deeper, but didn't you ever feel like giving up? I mean, you got all these great doctors around you and all these people who should be able to help you, but did you not get skeptical of the system at that stage when no one had answers for you yet?
Oh yeah, at one point I was having these fantasies of like finding some sort of very low cost like island, someplace around the world, and basically like renting some sort of hut because I kind of thought I was dying. So it was like, maybe I'll just go, I'll get a guitar, I'll get a hut, and I'll just, play guitar and learn how to play guitar and wait till I die. So that's kind of where my mind was going at one point. But then, I also had a internal belief around the ability of the body to heal from really challenging situations. And I think that, coupled with my love of science and, the nerdiness in me around like, I want to get to the science answers.
Yeah.
That I think was a huge part of what drove me not to find that deserted island.
Yeah. Well, good. And I mean, what you've done is you're able to find some answers and actually share it with other people. So what was that transition moment? What did you do to actually start reclaiming your health? Because you were just snowboarding yesterday. This morning you moved 2 feet of snow out. She's in the mountains outside of Denver, Dr. Diane is. And so now you got all this vitality, but how did you reclaim it?
Honestly, one tiny step and one day at a time. There wasn't some sort of like magic moment. And one of the things that I feel is so valuable for people to understand is that, as I'm sure you see in your practice, is that healing's not linear.
Mhm.
It's like, it's not like every day was like a step up. Like a lot of days were steps up. And then every once in a while, there'd be a day where it was like down a little bit, it was kind of like this sort of process. And so it really was, I think, a combination of just going through the layers, making sure my current house was safe, which initially it was. and, then going through the mold detox treatments and the Lyme treatments. And then once I got better, my house actually, I started feeling sick again a few years later and discovered that mold had started growing in my house and had to move and all of that. But it really was just one step at a time. And a lot for me too was like really working with my mindset, because especially on those days where it was like, oh, like up, up, up. And then like the down day where there was just like some sort of mini backslide, and it could feel mentally like everything was crashing down. Like I was backsliding into exactly where I was. So it was really important for me to, work on my mind, have my, meditation type of practice, and really work on keeping my thoughts calm and really working with stress resiliency, which was not easy at all. But I think that was a huge part of it.
Sure. Yeah, well, and I think you nailed it when it's like those little things add up. And so
Yeah.
one of the things we started doing last year is these, and you heard Kate talk about it this morning, but these hacks, our health accelerator challenge. You're a big biohacker, so you understand the term hack.
Yeah.
But yeah, hacks like a shortcut. And in healing, there's no shortcuts. But what you realize is, oh, if you just do small little things all the time, that's your shortcut. It's as simple as that. And so we all as a group, we go through these cool little challenges every week. And the challenge before this one was 20 seconds of cold exposure, like shower, go roll in the snow, getting Cade's ice plunge. But the challenge before that was get rid of sugar. I mean, just like simple things go so far. And I think for those of you who are in a chronic disease state, I think if you just realize like, man, just keep moving and keep pushing the needle up. And the crazy thing is I'm in my 40s now, mid 40s, and I'm 10 times healthier than I was in my mid 20s. And so it's like, wow, I never imagined I'd feel this good. I'd be this strong. I mean, I'm lifting weights with my son this morning. He's like, "Gee, you're lifting a lot today." I'm like, "Yeah, I feel it. I'm feeling good." So, I mean, these are great things. So there's some motivation you're giving to everybody. And so how do you keep it? Like, now you've got some of your health back. I mean, obviously if you're exposed to mold, that's like kryptonite for you. And
Hmm.
so maybe we can talk about some of the hidden areas of mold. I think it would be really important for our audience to give them some value of like, okay, watch out for these foods, watch out anything processed, peanuts. We can talk about all those things that where you can get mold exposure and as well as the house. And then maybe we can also talk about some strategies of understanding if you may have Lyme exposure, because it's not just on the East Coast anymore, folks. It's right here in Denver. It's right here in Utah. I mean, we got it right here in the beautiful Rocky Mountains. But so tell me, what do you do to keep yourself healthy right now?
I mean, I think what you said around these tiny little things and that they all add up is it's so valuable. It's so valuable. I completely agree, because it's, just like with healing from disease, there's not one magical thing I'm doing, but I wake up and I have a very particular morning routine. I start my day with a very short but significant meditation where I'm just looking at and I'm just going into a peaceful state and I'm really watching my thoughts. Like this morning, the first thought I had when I woke up was like, oh gosh, the snow. Like, I don't want to get out of bed and go plow the 2 feet off of snow off my driveway right now. So then it's like, boom, catching that thought and taking a moment to bring that into meditation to say, okay, how can I actually reorient my mind around what my day is so that I'm not bringing that first thought into the day? And so that's really what I'm doing. Like, very first thing is just checking in on my internal mindset. And
Yeah.
then on a normal day, I wake up early. I like to have some self-care time in the morning. So in a normal day, I'll do that, make myself some coffee, and I'm learning how to play the guitar and I'm taking vocal lessons. So I
Mhm.
go into a hour of like my creative time. I exercise. So I do my workout at home, and then I shower and I start my day.
Great.
So some of what I'm really doing is like orienting myself to like my own personal routine, what keeps me healthy and alive and vibrant, and actually caring for myself first, so then I have the vibrancy to care for the rest of the world throughout the day. And it really is just making conscious choices every day to choose good foods, to meditate, to get movement. And then even though I'm healthy and well, I still run a lot of lab tests on myself a couple times a year because I really want to make sure that I'm catching things when they get a little off balance. And so then I have my supplement routine and my peptides and everything that is oriented to my lab work because I'm continually just testing and tweaking and testing and tweaking. And I think a certain thing to also make sure to illustrate to your audience here is that, like you said the word journey earlier, which
Sure.
is super important because I think it's so easy in health to be like, there's just this destination that we get to.
Right.
And it's something health is something we attend to our entire life if we're going to maintain it.
So
So
I
it's
don't get a
really,
certificate that says, Reagan, you're now healthy. You can forget about it and go about your life.
yeah, exactly.
No
Check, you're
graduation
done.
day. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah. Yeah, we're on the same page.
So what are you taking? So I love your morning routine, by the way. It's cool you put some art into it.
Yeah.
I've always wished I spent a little more time playing guitar, and my mom had me in piano, and I couldn't wait to get done with those lessons. Like my ADD was just too out of control as a kid. I just wanted to get outside. But man, that's such a creative outlet. I'm really happy for you on that. But what are some of the things you're taking? I mean, and peptides. I mean, I'm always curious of what people are stacking in their peptides.
Yeah, so peptide wise, I'm doing a few different things. I did, and this is like what I'm about to say, I think is really useful for the Lyme and mold community because there's so much pain. This summer, and this is another example of how far I came, my husband, Dr. Miles, and I decided to build a gazebo in our backyard. And in the Rockies, like we weren't even thinking about this when we made this decision that you have to dig for the poles of the gazebo. You have to dig 3 feet down into the Rockies and pour concrete. So that's what started this. So in the process, I severely injured my wrist where I was having a lot of pain and tried PRP, tried myofascial work. Nothing was changing. Got it x-rayed, wasn't broken. I think it was like just kind of synovitis, like inflammation of the fluid in there. And so what I've been doing this month, which has been the most radical thing, like since July when I injured it, I had made maybe 20% improvement. And it was, to the point where like, lifting with my left hand was painful. And in 3 weeks of using this peptide therapy, I am probably at 80% now. I'm so excited. So it's KPV, which is, anti-inflammatory. And then I'm using the iontophoresis method, which that medical term, I'm sure most people don't know, is basically a method where you're using like an electrical conductivity. So I rub the KPV cream on my skin, and then I use the electrical conductivity to drive the KPV into my tissues. Which in school, when we learned this technique, it was like this big old like electrical box and you had to plug it into the wall. And now they make these really cool Band-Aids with like a mini battery in them. And you just put this cream on, you slap on the Band-Aid, and it just, drives
In there. Yeah.
It's so amazing. So I would definitely recommend anybody that has joint pain, inflammation around their body. I am so impressed with that particular peptide.
Yeah, I just started taking KPV, and Dr. Holtorf sent me some. And I love it because it's, this one I'm just taking oral. I could see if you had an injury, it'd be great to put there. But yeah, it's an immune system reset too. It works on the kispectin peptide and channel, and then also on the it's a melanotan and kispectin combo. So it's KPV, Ruth. And she put in KGB. I think KGB is like the Russian mob, but some of these peptides have really weird, ridiculous names. But I love that on the KPV. That's awesome. Did you try BPC 157 or TB4 or anything before that?
Yeah, it's interesting. The BPC, that one I've been taking orally on and off, and that one actually had a tendency to make me a little constipated, which it's like so great for tissue repair of the gut, and I've seen patients that get great results, but I've also had a few other people that have gotten constipated from it too. So that's the one. Have you ever seen that?
No, never seen it.
Yeah.
No, that is interesting.
Yeah, and then I'm using topical thymosin beta also on my wrist. as
Okay.
well. And then throughout COVID, just taking some thymosin alpha to support immune function. So
Right.
those are, and then the other one I'm doing at night is growth hormone peptides. So CJC 1295 plus ipamorelin. So
Yeah.
that I'm doing at night. And that one I think is, it definitely, when I started that one, really made me feel like I was sleeping substantially deeper. And I've never felt like, since my treatment's been over and I'm healthy, I've never felt like I've had a sleeping problem.
Mhm.
But it was very interesting, like waking up and being like, wow, I think that just a little heightened level of being refreshed, which I
Right.
think is another, useful thing on this topic too, of like anything we can use for sleeping better and for, tissue repair around, just healing from these types of diseases, I think is so important.
Man, it's such an important part of healing, because if you think about the amount of damage that happens when we lose sleep,
Hmm.
I mean, you can become insulin resistant just with 3 nights of poor sleep. I mean,
I've
that's
read
like,
the same
what?
study.
Yeah, okay. And I mean, it's crazy. And I actually use CJC 1295 ipamorelin. I don't know if you've ever put IGF-1 on there with it.
Uh-uh.
IGF-1 is like, it's powerful because it works more like a nootropic for
Hmm.
the brain. And I love that trifecta effect. And I do it in the morning. So yeah, I wake up in a fasted state, do it in the morning. And then you get that, you get about a 7 times pulsation rate of the growth hormone
Oh,
with the ipamorelin, because it's a somatostatin inhibitor.
yep.
And then the IGF-1 will actually push the growth hormone even farther throughout the day. I don't do it at night because the flushing tends to get me excited and I get too many ideas and then I want to read instead of sleep. So I changed it to the morning and actually do better on it that way. So I
Oh, that's so
cycle on
great.
and off that one, but yeah, try the IGF-1. You may find it very powerful.
I will. I really appreciate that tip. Thank you.
Yeah, but you're doing some awesome things. And so, any Chinese herbs that you take on a regular basis or that you like?
Yeah. There's always Chinese herbs that I'm taking. So it kind of varies depending upon what's going on. Right now, am I taking a little Cryptolepis right now? But that I think is actually the only one that I'm taking. There's a Chinese herbal formula called Viola Clear Fire. And so that's a blend of a bunch of different Chinese herbs. So that one I always have around, and that's something that we've used throughout COVID to help people's immune system. So that one I have it in my bag right here. So I travel with it just
Nice.
because it's such a good immune support. So that's the main one that I think I have like generally in my system. But right now I'm not on any strong, like daily dose of Chinese herbs at this point.
Okay.
So, but we
Yeah.
use them a lot for Lyme.
Well, yeah, they're great for Lyme. We use them a
Hmm.
lot too. And then I find that if I stack some of the Chinese herbs with the peptides, so based on the pathway I'm trying to open up with peptides, I'll use the Chinese herbs to modify the pathway. Cordyceps is a classic Chinese herb, and it
Yeah.
works on the AMPK pathway.
Yeah.
So if I'm taking 5-amino-1-MQ or MOD-SC, I love the cordyceps, the astragalus, ginseng. All of those actually open up that same type of pathway. So yeah, there's just so many cool things that you can do. Adding modern medicine with the ancient Chinese is pretty darn fascinating.
Oh yeah, and it's so cool to see the chemistry. Those same herbs you're mentioning, like astragalus and cordyceps, can even affect the HPA axis and help with that. That too. So we get a lot of different mechanisms that are coming from those herbs.
Yeah, yeah, because we'll use epitalin to reset the HPA axis because it works right on the pineal gland.
Yep.
And then those three herbs, I'll have to try that combination with some of my patients. I think it's brilliant.
Do you know about Cryptolepis? Do you know
Not,
about that
no,
herb?
no,
It's a
I've heard.
little bit, that one's a little bit harder to source, unfortunately, but it is starting to become better. We're working with a Chinese herbal company now that we have a new contract with. I'm not actually allowed to say the name of this company yet because they don't want a ton of calls, but they're putting together the formula blends that we've been using to treat Lyme. And one of the things in there is Cryptolepis. And there was a study that came out, gosh, I think this was maybe about a year ago, with Lyme disease, and Cryptolepis performed best for actually being able to get to the Borrelia in like the cystic, like dormant type of stage, as well as the persister cells that don't seem to respond to any antibiotics. And so Cryptolepis was the one thing that, like, this was all in vivo or in vitro. So it was in a petri dish, like most of the Lyme studies, unfortunately. But basically what they were doing is they were testing at many different days. And at the 21-day mark, they were still seeing there was no signs of any recurrence of Borrelia regrowth with the Cryptolepis. So it's a really cool herb from a, chronic pathogen standpoint.
So is it must be like a heat clear, or what do you know the energetics behind it?
I don't remember the energetics, but I know most of the, the Chinese herbs are heat clearers. So like we use like a lot of like cactus a lot is a big one we use, which is a big Chinese herb we use, which is an amazing heat clearer.
Yeah.
So that the heat clearing and like antibacterial are almost the same. Heat clearing in Chinese medicine almost means antibacterial in Western medicine.
Yeah. It's like the coldest medications are the antibiotics. So
Right.
interesting. So let's talk a little bit about mold. Let's like where people might. I know you and I could go down this wormhole forever, but people are going to drop off because they're like, "What are they talking about?" But I think most of my patients are used to these vignettes of nerdiness. But maybe we could talk a little bit about the foods and sources of mold. I mean, your house is a big one, and you went, you probably, I don't know how many months you went when it hit you again before you realized it was your house. But how did you detect it?
I mean, honestly, as a mold sensitive person, I feel a lot of times that I can walk into a room and be like, there's mold here. I think what was a little bit different about my own home was that it was like versus like not like living in it, and like it starts gradually and it's like, oh, the symptoms start shifting gradually. So I don't know how long it was there before I noticed it, but it was like this slow, gradual process around like, gosh, am I slipping back? Or am I just having a bad day? And that went on for a while. And then I remember waking up in the middle of the night one night and just being like, there's mold here. I just know there is. And I actually packed a bag that morning and told my husband I was not coming back into the house, and called a friend and went and stayed with her. And then sure enough, so he got the house tested. He doesn't react to mold, which is wonderful. So he was able to stay in the house and get it tested. And it was I don't remember what it tested at, what like hurts me level it tested at anymore, 16, 17, maybe. I don't remember the number. But that was definitely a huge thing. And some of the things that I counsel my clients on in looking for homes, like one of the things that is really important to understand is the way homes are built, really makes us like a difference from like if there's going to be a higher likelihood of mold growing. So like, for example, and one of the things to look for if people are moving into an apartment or a home is to look for like the awning outside, like on the roof, like how many inches away from the house that is. And if it's anything less than like, 4, 5, 6 inches, preferably 6, what's going to happen is the water is just going to slide off the house. It's not going to drain well, and it can get under into that foundation. And it's the same thing around like, okay, so the foundation comes into the earth. Is like the earth draining? Is it at an angle that's taking, going down away from the house? Or is the earth at an angle that's more going towards the house? And that's another huge thing to look for, is just, those kind of questions. Another thing I saw one time in a client, they couldn't find any mold in the house, but we knew it was there. And they went into the attic, and that's when they finally found it. And what they realized when they were doing this was the exhaust fan, like in the bathroom, actually, instead of like going and moving that moist air outside, it was moving the air into the attic.
That they
And
duct
so
it properly. Yeah.
exactly. So these kind of questions when people are renting or buying are really, really important to say, okay, first of all, getting into a space that not only is mold free, but is built in a way where mold is not super likely to grow.
Right. I think that's a critical thing. And even when you're building your house, I mean, EMFs can really start weakening your system. So I built a house, and it's got concrete. We had the metal roof that extended to the ground, so it was nice and grounding. So yeah, there's so many great things. Couldn't agree more. Making sure, if you are building a house, the French drains are actually really critical to help pull the water away. And so many old houses just don't have them. They weren't thinking about it like we're thinking about it now. And I'm very sensitive to mold too. I've gone into hotel rooms and I'll go to the front. I'm like, I can't stand this room. They're
Yep.
like, what? That's our nicest room or whatever. I'm like, I don't care. I'll stay in your crappiest room if there's no mold. I'll stand
Yes.
there. I'll sleep in the hall if I have to. But yeah, I'm very sensitive to it too. And my wife's always like, you're such a like princess, and Cade's seen me. Cade and I travel a lot together, and he's like, man, what is up with you? But I think Cade
The,
inherited the better genes. Is that you think
the
that's what happened? He got the bigger beard. He's better looking. He's stronger.
no, the worst is if you're sharing a room, like we'll when we travel together without our wives, we'll have separate beds, obviously, but we'll share a room. He is a diva. It's like he's got to have the blinds like everything's got to be blacked out. He's got his little mask. I'm I'm over here like, can you just go to sleep, man? Like, let's.
Cade has to read me a good night story. He rubs his
I tuck him
forehead,
in. I gotta like tuck the covers under him.
little foot massage.
So you're probably like me then too. Like, when you travel, I'm always looking for that like blue little light, like that LED light on the corner of the television, be like, how can we cover this thing up?
Yeah, I put my clothes all over
Me
things.
too. Me
Got
too.
tape that I'll bring with me. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I totally get that.
But your environment, what you mentioned in your environment, it's so critical of looking for mold and looking for those things. How about in food? I think a lot of people don't realize that when we're eating packaged processed foods, even if it's like organic, keto, paleo, vegan, whatever you think is healthy, a lot of these packaged foods have mold in it.
Yeah, packaged foods, peanuts and aflatoxins, like you mentioned. And the other one that people don't think about a lot that I've seen is the bins. Like, so if you like are like the
Oh,
bulk
right.
bins,
Yeah.
that's one of the number one areas that I've read that can actually grow mold. So even though it's like a tiny bit cheaper sometimes to buy things that way, it's oftentimes not a very good idea because of the mold there.
Yeah. Ruth says, oh, I don't do the bins. Why? Do you think people are like not washing their hands? All right. And Cheryl's asking, could you list the specific symptoms again and symptoms of mold, mold exposure, mold toxicity? So do you mind mentioning some of those?
Yeah, I mean, one of the most common things, and of course, everybody, just to kind of prequel this part, everybody's going to be different. So, what I say, if you hear like only some of them that you have and others, this list is a general list. But one of the most common things that I see in just about everybody is some sort of pain, whether it's headaches or migraines or joint pain, fibro pain, but pain is probably the number one thing I see. And one of the things that I do see most classically from a pain standpoint differentiate Lyme from mold is Lyme pain tends to be in larger joints more often. So hips, shoulders, and Lyme pain also often tends to like migrate. So it might be okay, my right hip one day and my left shoulder another. Versus mold, it can affect those joints for sure, but it does have a tendency, and what I've seen, to affect the smaller joints, elbows and wrists and fingers, almost a little more arthritic in some ways, although it can certainly get into the muscles. But the other thing I've seen from a pain perspective with mold is it doesn't tend to migrate. Like if it's like, oh, you have headaches, then it's like you just have headaches.
Yeah.
So the pain's big, chronic fatigue is big. Definitely a lot of temperature dysregulation. So if you're feeling like, wow, you're just like sweating for no reason, and then everybody else around you is really comfortable, or waking up with night sweats, insomnia, these types of things are really common. I definitely see other things like menstrual, dysregulation, low testosterone, the sex hormones get involved quite a bit.
Crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
whole
So those are the
system gets
common
so
things.
downregulated. And so we have Michelle here. Ruth's got the mold gene. I've got it too, Ruth. So join the party of divas. It's fine. We can stand up for what we need in life. In reference to Lyme, this is Michelle. Hey, Michelle. Good to have you guys on, by the way. I appreciate the comments. So in reference to Lyme, my primary care just tells me that my Lyme is gone and my symptoms are stemming from stress. She says that me stressing about Lyme is perpetuating my symptoms. And so her answer is Xanax. All you got to do is take a benzodiazepine. And by the way, benzodiazepines are up 38% this year. Benzodiazepine prescriptions. So
Wow.
it's isn't that crazy?
That's crazy.
I won't go on that COVID tangent right now, but it's easier said than done how you handle the stress making your Lyme symptom. How do you handle the stress making your Lyme symptoms worse? And so I'll let you take that. I've got some insights too.
Yeah, so a couple of different things. I mean, one from, the peptide standpoint, and we just learned about this peptide and I just started trying myself on it this week. So it starts with a B. I'm sure you know it. The one that actually works on the GABA receptors like a benzo does. Do you know this peptide?
It's not ringing a bell.
Okay, just started trying it this week, and my experience of it is like there's definitely something to it. It's really relaxing. I'm totally blanking on it though right now, but so there is a peptide that does work for this.
Not Selenk. It's not
No, it's oral.
It's oral. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway.
Yeah, I have it in my cabinet at home, so I can definitely, get this
you need to
information
send me
to
a
you guys.
picture, because
I will.
now my curiosity's piqued. So
yeah, I'll send you a picture when I get home tonight, and that way if your listeners ask to, then that can easily be passed on. But so that's one thing for sure, just as another way of working with the GABA receptors, which really help calm the system. And there's definitely a lot from a physical standpoint that we can do. Certainly, various herbs such as California poppy and magnolia is a great one. There's a lot of different herbal medicines that can really help with this. But in addition to that, I really do think like spending time every day working on the thoughts is so important. There's a study that I really like talking about, and the study was it was a study of 99. And basically what they did in this study a very particular like stress test. That's a kind of it's used a lot in research for inducing stress in people. And what they do in this particular stress test is they basically have people spontaneously get up and basically give a speech in front of an audience. And then they make people basically do mental arithmetic in front of like a crowd that's like staring them down. So that's how they've seen, to really like elevate cortisol levels and influence stress. And so what they were doing in this study is they gave this test. And then along the test, they were basically asking people to report in like a bunch of different moments if they had like what their internal thought was, and if they would say their internal thought was positive, negative, or neutral. And then they were also measuring cortisol levels. And so what they found is that even though everybody had the exact same stressor, the cortisol, and this hormone that's really, really exacerbating the system as far as, bringing more sympathetic control. So this hormone basically was higher significantly in those who were thinking negatively about their situation. And so one of the biggest things, and I say this with like a large amount of compassion, because I know firsthand how easy it is to go through these illnesses and just have these thoughts that are just negative and dark and hard. It's so normal. And also, there is something that we can be empowered to do, to take time every day to work on those thoughts, even if they are normal, because we can actually see, like with studies like this, that we can lower our stress hormones when we are changing our internal dialogue. And it's not easy. And it's normal to have those thoughts, but it's so, in my experience, it's so worth taking the time to do.
Right. Yeah. I think that's brilliant. And Michelle, we put every Lyme and any mycotoxin patient, we put them on Selenk because it is antimicrobial and it works on the GABAergic receptors. So until we get the B peptide that you take orally, I'm super curious about that. But that's a really good place to start. But actually, like maybe consider working with a different doctor. Like give Diane a call and get some insights, because the problem with primary care and the problem with treating Lyme that I see in so many patients. I mean, we've got we got a bunch of Lyme patients who've gone through the conventional conveyor belt of year-long antibiotic cycles, and they just, all it is they're trying to isolate that one causative factor, which is Lyme, and they're just trying to destroy the Lyme, which is what we're trying to do with COVID, which is, it doesn't make any sense from a biological perspective. Do not treat the Lyme. Don't treat the whole body. And I think that's what Diane's been talking about. That's what I've been alluding to is, yes, it feels nice and warm and fuzzy when you get the diagnosis. Like, hey, we figured out what's causing all your problems in life. And then what we realize is if you just try to take care of that one thing, it's not that one thing, it's the environment. And so that's the most important thing, correcting the HPA axis. You can't fix Lyme without correcting the HPA axis. You can't fix Lyme if you don't correct the gut. Oh, wait, you can't correct Lyme if you don't correct your mindset. So all these things, Michelle, I would make sure that you get back in your soul of souls and your heart of hearts and realize how powerful you are and that you can heal and never stop healing. And so yes, your doctor may be dead on that you're worrying too much about the Lyme, but your doctor is also not giving you something else to actually propel you forward. And so that's the biggest failure in medicine right now is doctors that they come diagnostic treatment. It's a little tiny box that they get stuck in. And so we're telling you there's a whole world out there. So hopefully this has been helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, my favorite. Can I give a research example that supports what you just said real fast?
Oh, absolutely.
There's a really cool study that I like that actually showed that E. coli, and E. coli is a bacteria that often is involved in small intestinal bacteria overgrowth, as well as UTIs. So a lot of people have chronic UTIs, and E. coli will release endotoxins. Endotoxins actually turn down a protein in the liver that is needed for proper detoxification of mold toxins and Lyme toxins. So it's like there's this direct link, right? Where it's like somebody has SIBO or chronic UTIs or, just an E. coli overgrowth in their large intestine. And all of a sudden their liver can't detox mold and Lyme. And so people are wondering why they're not getting better. And it's like, well, there's this other, you have a block. And that's why what you're saying is so important.
Is that the cytochrome P450? Is that what it's the pathway it's impacting?
No, it's called the MRP2 protein. And the job of the MRP2 protein, it's just a transport protein that connects the liver to the bile tubes, the bile canaliculi. And so basically we have the toxin, it flows through the bile tubes into our gut and then out the gut. And so that transfer of the liver, that protein connecting the liver to the bile that's what's actually blocked.
Got it. Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah. So once again, looking at the whole picture is so critical. And I really appreciate the work you've been doing. And you've got a new book that it's not out yet. It's out in May.
Yes.
And so tell us a little bit about that, because that's one of the things that people can do if they want to stay in touch with you and get a little more insights on your thinking. I look at books as reading someone else's thoughts, which is kind of, which is really cool. So maybe you could talk about that and how people can get in touch with you.
Thanks. Yeah, I'd love to share. So the book is in a lot of ways, like a lot of our conversation today is really illustrated in the book. So it's really looking and saying, okay, well, how do we approach Lyme and mold from a more whole body perspective? So there's a lot of research in there, illustrating examples like I would, just shared around like, okay, E. coli prevents mold, from actually leaving the body.
Yep.
So it's very whole body oriented. And then also from a mindset, really looking at how do people actually start that feel like most people do? Like I can't get a hold of my thoughts and I can't meditate and it's so hard. So the idea of this book is really, it's kind of a survivor's guide in many ways, where it's like, how do I start getting control of my thoughts from like level one? If I can't meditate, if I can't do any of this. And so it walks people from a mindset through a lot of supportive care exercises, these sorts of things. And then it's also really done in a way where like I find a lot of my Lyme and mold community really love the science. And then there's other people that I find are like, I can't even process it. Just tell me what to do, that sort of thing. So I wrote in a way that also kind of appeals to both the science, part of the population, the people that like it, as well as doctors and clinicians. So when we get technical in any of the chapters, I kind of prequel it with like, we're getting sciencey here. So if you don't like this, skip further in the chapter. We'll give you kind of the Cliff Notes version of it. So it's really readable. The other thing in there that I think is really useful is in the survivor's guide. So like there's a chapter that I love called Doctor Hopping, when to hop and when to stop.
Oh, got it.
And so it's really like talks about like how to interview your doctor and what questions do you really ask to determine if this doctor and clinician is the right fit for you. And
Right.
if it's not, it's like maybe that person's still good to work with and you just need more people on your team. So it really goes through like how to build your team, how to know when it's time to move on, what happens if you move on too soon. So those are kind of some of the major things covered in there.
No, that sounds great. That's awesome. Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you. And next time you're in Utah, let's get the slopes
I would love
shred.
that.
Yeah, because it's snowing and it's fun. And what's the best way people can get in touch with you?
So as far as the book, one thing I wanted to let people know is that we can, the book comes out right now, the book launch is set for May 24th, but there could be, a day or two change. The first 2 days of the book launch, we're going to give the ebook away for free. So there is a link. Can I put a link in the chat?
And put it in there. Yeah.
So it's mwh.thrivecart.com/book.
There it is.
And basically, if you put your email in there, we will send you an email. We'll shoot you a text like a few days before the book's going to be released, so you can make sure that you're getting your free copy of that. So that's one thing. And then my clinic is medicinewithheart.com. So if you're interested in in coming to the clinic and working with us and seeing if we're a good fit, that's where you get a hold of us. And if you're a clinician and you want to come to our Functional Medicine Training Institute to learn more about how to treat things like this, it's the Medicine with Heart Institute, which the URL for that is mindbodyfunctionalmedicine.com. So that's basically the ways.
Awesome. Well, really appreciate you and keep up the great work. Can't wait to continue the conversation. So
yeah, same here. It's been really lovely. Thanks so much, everybody, for having me on your show today.
Thank you so much for joining us. And everybody out there, thanks for tuning in today. It's such a cool show. Love these shows every week. We'll be back same time, same place next week. And next week is actually my birthday. So you guys better be bringing me some cool stuff. So remember your challenge for the week: 20 seconds or more cold exposure, cold shower, cold plunge, something to really create some hormetic activity in your body. So love you guys. Have an amazing week. We'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.